thought it was,
Yeah.
and he didn't. He told me that he wanted me to write a book about Della, my daughter. That was my daughter. Della died of an overdose of drugs when she was 36, and he wanted me to write a book about her and about my life as a single parent, because I was divorced at the time that I raised Della, and I took custody of her, and he wanted me to write that book. Subsequently, I've written that book in Della's voice, where she says, the book starts, "My name is Della Charlotte Barris, and I'm dead." And then it goes on from there, and she tells the story of her life and where she went wrong, all the way back to her childhood. And when I presented that book to Burnham, or not to Burnham, to Burnham, he didn't want a book as drastic as that, and nobody else did. I took it everywhere, and nobody else wanted to publish that book. They said that in her voice, it's fiction, whereas if it were in my voice, it would be a memoir, and memoirs sell far better than fiction, they did. So, I've been working on transforming that book into my voice, which is not quite the same thing, but who knows?
But that sounds like an extraordinary exercise, writing in your daughter's voice that way.
Oh, I thought it was incredibly good, and I was I'm published by Simon & Schuster, and I couldn't wait to get this book to them. I was in the middle of promoting a book that I wrote called The Big Question, which is about television. And they just kept telling me, just wait until we finish publicizing this book, and we'll get to that. And when I gave it to them, they passed on it immediately. And it's been passed and passed and passed by
Isn't that
everybody.
amazing? That so surprises me. Given your stature, given the fact that you as a writer think it's a good book, that it's so unusual, that it has so much pathos, that it took so much out of you, and yet it does say something about publishing, unfortunately.
It does. What I got back was, it's too sad, it's too despairing, it's too this, it's too that, and I thought it was a cautionary tale for parents and children, to try to warn them about the potentials of drugs. I made huge mistakes, and Della, of course, made huge mistakes. Between the two of us, it was just a disaster. And I thought by saying these things, it might help.
So you're working on revising that book now?
Yeah, I still am. I'm just about finished, but I don't know what's going to happen when it goes out.
Yeah. Well, your latest book, and I just finished reading it, The Big Question, is an intriguing book, and it really does relate to what we talked about in part one of the interview, the way in which these game shows have ratcheted themselves up so that the stakes become higher and higher. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that book?
Well, I once remember being selling another book to a book crowd, and saying that I thought that eventually someone was going to kill somebody on television, and there was a gasp, a big gasp, and then I quoted various, that they're going to do an electrocution one of these days on television, and they're going to do this and so forth and so on. But so I decided to write a book about that, and I had a book in which eventually the winning, if the person got the question right, they'd win all sorts of money, and if they got the question wrong, they would be executed. And what can you say?
Now, how did the editors respond to that book?
They loved it.
They loved it.
They loved it, and the book did well. But it just goes to show you, it's hard to figure out what they love, and what they don't love. I have a mystery coming out in June called "Who Killed Art Deco." It's my first mystery, and they just loved it, and they want me to write mysteries, and I don't want to write mysteries I don't want to write another mystery.
You wanted to write that mystery, and that was it.
That's it.
So that's coming out
in June.
Okay. And what is your next book? I take it you're already at work.
I'm going to try to sell Della, and then I don't know.
Do you write? Do you write every day?
Every day, yeah.
So it's part of your lifestyle now. It's who you are.
Definitely. It's a part. I get up, have breakfast, and go, and I write. And I write for 2 or 3 hours, and then have lunch. And in the afternoon, if I can get back to writing, I will. But if I can't, if I'm written out, I'll read.
Well, you've said you've been quoted as saying that you would want much more to be remembered as a writer than as a television producer, and yet you don't know that this. Or you feel that this probably wouldn't be the case.
No, not at all.
Could you address that a little bit?
Well, it won't be the case at all. When I die, whatever publicity there will be from that will be the host of the Gong Show is dead. Or if I always used to joke about it by saying on my tombstone, "Gonged at last." But that's truly what it will be. It won't be anything else. There was a rumor that I died, I don't know, a year or two ago. Somebody saw it up in New England. There was a headline on one of the television stations, the bottom line said, "Gong Show host dies." And they got all excited and called me up, and said, "Whew. Wow, I'm so glad you're alive." But that's what it'll be. There is no question about that.
It must be very odd for you to know or to feel that you know what your epitaph will be. But what it means, I guess, is that you made such a mark in that one area, that you were so memorable. I mean, it's not so much that you're not a good writer, but that you were so memorable in that role, that so many people, I guess, have affection for that persona. That would be a very positive way to look at it.
Well, that would be a positive way to look at it, but I don't look at it that way.
You would like to have it be forgotten?
No, I would like to be remembered as somebody who wrote Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, or You and Me, Babe, or something else, as an author, as a writer, than as a television producer. I just don't know. I don't know why I feel that way. I just do. I think a television producer, a game show television producer, is one of the lowest of the lows. I don't think.
But aren't you being an intellectual snob there?
Maybe. I don't care. That's the way
Think
I
of
feel
all the
about
people
it.
that you gave pleasure to in that role.
Yeah, I can never understand that. That's probably true. There are probably a bunch of people out there who I would be surprised to know that they thought that was a pleasurable, situation. But I still think game show them. I mean, I won't ever partake in any game show symposium or anything like that again, ever, never. And I mean, I don't even talk about it that much.
Yeah.
But
people
with
make
you,
people
I
make
would talk about anything.
people make you talk about it. Well, let's get back to the writing aspect.
Okay.
I wonder if you could tell me. You mentioned some fairly contemporary writers that you admired who lived near you in the south of France when you were living there. What about other writers, perhaps in the tradition that you feel have inspired you or that you like to read?
I love Graham Greene. I love Philip Roth.
Graham Greene and Philip Roth, very different.
Very different.
What do you like about
I'm a very eclectic reader. I read all sorts of stuff. I mean, if it's, I mean, I like. There's a mystery writer that I can't think of that I love,
Well, you had told me earlier you like Somerset Maugham, who's
Yes.
got such a sense of storytelling. But I'm interested in the fact that you say Philip Roth, who also is so interested in playing around with his autobiography.
Yes.
What's real and what's not real. And certainly that's something you did, and perhaps you didn't do, in Confessions of a Dangerous Mind. So I can see a kinship there.
Well, Philip has a new book out called something or other.
Indignation?
It's something.
Something like that, yeah.
And he just makes me laugh. I just, sometimes I find his writing unbearably funny, and then sometimes it becomes very tragic. I love being able to go to those extremes in writing. I don't know if I can do it, but I like that type of thing. I like Jim Harrison. Jim Harrison writes some really good stuff, and he wrote a thing called something or other that I love, and so forth and so on. But you know, I just do you have another question?
Well, I guess let's end on the. We've been talking about literature, your writing, and so forth in this segment, but maybe we should end with television, since, as you say, you are likely to be known for your work in television. You yourself have said that for your epitaph, it will probably say something to the effect, Chuck Barris dies, host of the Gong Show, or gonged at last, or something of that sort. But I want to ask you what you would hope or feel is the most memorable aspect of your life, what you would want to be remembered for, as opposed to perhaps what you think you will be remembered for.
Well, I know what I'll be remembered for, and I don't think that's all that wonderful, but the thing that I loved the most, the thing that I enjoyed doing the most, was writing Palisades Park. That was the best memory I have of all the things that I created.
This was your hit song.
That was the first thing that I ever created, and it was a hit song. And the joy that I got out of that, I told you, when it would play on my car radio, I'd have to pull over on the side of the road. But to this day, whenever I hear that played on the radio, I get just a very excited feeling about it. And, you know, that's the thing that I really like the most.
Well, it's interesting you say that you had your 20-year chunks. You had a 20-year chunk in television, and then 20 years in writing novels. And maybe your next 20-year chunk is writing television, for television dramas or series. I want you to think about that.
Okay. I'll think about it.
On that note, I want to thank you so much for giving us these two interviews. It's been a delight to have you here.
It's been a pleasure being here, Paula. Thank you.
And I want to thank you for joining us today on the Drexel interview.